Have you ever gotten to tell a former teacher / or someone else, look at what I've become? You were wrong? If so, what is your story? I went to high school in a really small town. In this small town I worked as a farmhand. After I got my associate's degree at the local community college, I followed my boyfriend to a larger city where he got a job and would work part-time and continue my education. When I told my boss about my plans, he said, $50 says you'll be pregnant in 6 months. You better believe I went back and collected that $50. Now I'm married, own a house, and 2 years into my PhD, still not pregnant. I wish I could parade my husband in front of all of his teachers. Hubby's parents were migrant farm workers. They were not immigrants, just really needed to work, and as a result hubby started school very late. The school dropped him in the same class as his age group, then acted all surprised when he couldn't keep up. They shuffled him into special ed and washed their hands. Some horrid teachers actually told him he was too stupid to learn anything / would never amount to anything. He believed them and quit school in 7th grade. Then there was us. When we married he could barely read and was terribly insecure about it. I had books going in every room. Now, he tells people that I taught him to read, but that's not quite right. He saw how often I had my nose in a book and wanted to see what the big deal was. So, I figured out about what his reading level was and picked up some Hardy Boys from the library. I showed him how to look up words in the dictionary, and in 6 months he was reading Stephen King. We don't make a lot of money or drive fancy cars, but we've lived an amazing life. My art teacher in my last 2 years of high school in the UK told me I was talentless and lazy and caught me and my friends once in the school concourse looking at my portfolio of set and costume designs I was prepping for an interview for theatre school in London. He grabbed it from my friend, leafed through with a sneer, and said I'd get nowhere with that rubbish, and no college would take me, let alone one in London. Well, I was offered a place on the course the day after my interview, mostly on the strength of my portfolio. Fast forward to my final year in college, and I was designing the sets for one of the Bay acting classes shows, and I don't recall why, but we needed chemistry equipment as set dressing. As I was back up in Scotland for a long weekend, I called my old chemistry teacher, who I did get on with, and he agreed to give me a loaf of stuff he'd had lying about in his garage. I went into the school to pick the stuff up, intending just to go in and out again without speaking to anyone else. But do I not run into the art teacher in the corridor, and he demands to know what I'm doing there. Oh, just getting some props for the show I'm designing, down in London. His face was a picture. Funny thing is, I've since had illustrations professionally published, have sold paintings, and I actually can't even remember that art teacher's name. My husband and my cousin both did. My cousin used to fall asleep all the time in school. He was bullied by his classmates and teachers would claim he was lazy or didn't care. That if he wouldn't stay up all night, he wouldn't be so tired all the time. He ended up getting into the army, only to be medically discharged after they discovered he had narcolepsy. He came home and went to his old school to let as many people he could know. My husband was told he would never amount to anything by more than one teacher. He barely graduated from high school, but managed to not only go to college, but received 2 different degrees. Taking a test is still very hard for him, and he struggles with math, but he still did it with a 3.0 and higher GDP. So I have 2. One is about me, the other is about my boyfriend. When I was born I was 16 weeks early. All the doctors and nurses said that I wouldn't live, and if I lived I wouldn't be much more than a human vegetable. Well, when I graduated high school with honors, my mom sent a senior picture of me and a graduation announcement back to that doctor. My boyfriend's is a little different. His mom got pregnant with him when she was in high school. One of her teachers said that she should abort him because she wasn't married. This was in the 80s and couldn't care for him 17 years later. My boyfriend has that same teacher for a substitute. He asks if he's Julie, mom's maiden name's boy. My boyfriend's response? Yeah, I am. You're the guy who said she should have aborted me. In 6th grade everyone took a typing class where, among other computer basics, we were supposed to be learning how to touch type. I was struggling a bit because I was mostly using the correct fingers on the correct keys, but I watched the keyboard and not the screen. Also, I could never get the hang of the two shift keys. I'd only use the right shift key, which meant I was using the wrong pointer finger when doing some of the middle letters as capitals. The teacher insisted that I was never going to be able to do anything on computers and would fall behind. Fast forward to senior year, and I'm taking a Lotus 123 class with the same teacher. I'm now the top student and she's asking me to go help everyone else. After I finished my assignments, I showed her. Lol. I was in special ed as a kid. We had to fight with the schools to get me the help I needed. At one meeting with the school higher-ups, the high school principal turned to me with a sweet smile, pointed out I was 16 now, and asked if I'd like to drop out of school. I was stunned. Why would I be fighting to get an education if I planned to throw it away as soon as I was legal age to do so? I informed her that I planned to go to college, that she was a wretched person and a horrid teacher. I was going through a Charles Dickens phase at that age, so used colorful insult words, and that she should be ashamed at making such an assumption. When I got my PhD, I looked her up. She was still at the school, so I went there and scheduled a meeting with her. I slapped down my resume and a copy of my book and waited to see if she'd recognize me. She did not, and told me she wasn't looking for any school counselors. My PhD is in applied psychology with a master's in mental health counseling. I assured her I wasn't there to get a job, that I already had one as a professor. I asked if she remembered a few years back when there was a very angry young woman who was struggling in school and fighting to go to college. I described how I used to look. I lost like 200 pounds in college, and I could see the realization dawn on her more and more as I described the terms of my IEP. She didn't apologize or anything, but she knew she had been wrong. I ended our meeting by advising her not to give up on her students anymore, especially the ones who wanted to succeed. Those kids need an advocate and a supporter, not someone advising them to drop out and throw away their futures. Lucky for me, I'm a defiant little brat who refused to let grown-ups tell me I couldn't do whatever I wanted, and I wanted to get a PhD more than anything, so screw them all. I went to a fancy private school in Connecticut and I really was a misbehaved little punk. Detentions and psychologist visits and all that. I ended up being asked not to return after second grade, which is their way of expelling people so other girls can take the spot next year without having to formally put it on anyone's record. Anyways, my little cousin started kindergarten there exactly 20 years later. In the pre-visits a year before, I went to see the school with them for old time's sake. Shook hands with the teacher. She said, "Hi, I'm Mrs. X." I said, "I know, you were my kindergarten teacher." She flipped and started introducing me to everyone. After asking what I was up to these days, she remembered me. Only like 3 black people per grade, so not hard by process of elimination, but apparently conveniently forgot about how terrible I was. She even told all the parents that they should send their kids there because everyone ends up beautiful and successful like me. No, I wish. Maybe someday. When I was a senior in high school, I missed a lot of class because I was severely depressed and no one knew/cared. I had this English teacher who at first I was excited to have as he taught my mom. I realized he was a smartest jerk who often had his foot in his mouth. Anyway, after I'd racked up several absences, I had a friend in that class tell me this teacher had told the class I would never amount to anything. There was zero reason for my friend to lie. He was a trustworthy, drama-free guy. Those words really stuck with me, and honestly they still hurt a little. The thing is, now I'm becoming a teacher in May. I have seen him in the last year or so, and I was very tempted to say something. If I never get the chance I'll be fine, because he's already shown me what not to be. My freshman year of high school was kind of rough. As such, my grades suffered quite a bit. But I finally made a friend who I had a number of classes with, including biology. Well, my biology teacher hated me, for reasons unknown, but I have my suspicions. I had her class right after lunch. For the first half of the year I had no friends, and also a lot of anxiety, much of which was centered around the cafeteria, and not having anyone to sit with. I'd get tummy aches and leave early, fairly often. So I missed her class a lot. I also was driven to school by my brother, who would hotbox me most mornings. I was very innocent at the time, and didn't realize I was going into school smelling like weed. At the end of junior year it was time to sign up for senior classes. By this time I'd become very close with previously mentioned friend. My grades had also gone up, and I was doing very well in school. She wanted to sign up for AP Chemistry and dual enrollment Biology II for senior year. I wanted to have classes with her, so I wanted to sign up for the same. In order to take 2 science classes, we had to get approval by the department head, which was, you guessed it, freshman year biology teacher. I went with my friend to have our forms signed. Friend went first. Teacher raved about her and having her in her class. Then comes my turn. She kept asking if I was sure that it would be a lot of work. Was I sure I was up to it? Did I really think I could handle it? On and on. Honestly, she made me feel like crap. But I just said yes, because I was desperate to have classes with my friend, and also felt more confident in my knowledge and ability. So she finally relented and signed. And then, at the end of the year, she had to give me a trophy at graduation for being the best student in the class.